Hi, this is Gilles, the radio prepper, and we are back with the ME30 from Midway Electronics. It's a radio designed by Dave Benson from Small Wonder Labs, company that's no longer in existence. Dave Benson retired, and by the way, doesn't want to be bothered, so don't call him about this radio. Contact Rick at Midway Electronics. This radio is awesome. I'm really happy about it. I'm really happy about how it turned out. It has batteries inside. You saw part one. Go see part one if you haven't seen it. A nifty battery tester. And it's on 30 meter band. Now 30 meter is a great band. It's a digital and CW, so Morse code band only, mostly. So you don't have any contest going on there. So it's really great because most of the time, you have a lot of bandwidth for yourself. And I really like 30 meters. It's great for long distance communications. It doesn't quite work for NVIS, near vertical incidence skywave, where your radio waves go straight up and rain back down. But it's pretty good for long distance. And sometimes when 20 meters, 14 megahertz, is not quite open, meaning that the propagation isn't there and you can't make long distance contacts. Usually 30 meters will work. So hence my choice of band for this great radio. I like it also because there is no display, and you'd think maybe that would be a problem, but as long as you're in the band, who cares what frequency you're on. And I still have a bar that will come here. You saw it in part one. A chrome bar to protect the buttons and make sure that this switch here, which turns the radio on, doesn't get flipped by accident and you drain your battery. So I will put this bar here later because I have yet to put a button here for tuning. And that's about it really. All the contacts are here. The plugs are on the side. A little bit too close here together, but and it's an all-in-one radio. All I would need now is to have a nice little Morse key on top of it so I can send. It doesn't have an automatic keyer, by the way, but again, you don't really need that. The only time you might need an automatic keyer is when you have a radio that is able to record messages that you can put on a loop and maybe have the radio automatically call every so often. But in this case, it's just a very simple radio. It transmits from and receives from 10.1 to 10.125 kilohertz, megahertz. So it's perfect because it's the lower part of the band where most CW Morse code signals are. So. But I'll just stop talking because I'm rambling. Let's see the construction, and then we'll move on to some contacts. So make sure you watch until the end. I have a sheet of plastic that I'm using here in the case to insulate the circuit board from the case. And here you can see the inside with the antenna B and C. We have a jack for the key, another jack for the audio, and the power plug. I have a 10-turn potentiometer for tuning, an on and off switch, and a volume potentiometer. And here I have also a very nice a little battery tester I found on eBay, which is it's going to be very useful. Now I have a piece of circuit board here I'm going to be using to insulate the board from the batteries, which will come on top of this circuit board. I have to cut a little opening here to so that it fits. I have 3 batteries. They are 3.7 volts, so 4.2 maximum. One goes right here on top and it barely fits. So we have 1 and 2 and 3 batteries. And here's the most stressful moment in any kit building. It's when you put the power on, which is called the smoke test. So, because of course sometimes it starts smoking. So I plugged in a speaker and I'll plug in the battery and we'll see what happens. This is live. Oh, I heard some noise. Okay, it's plugged in and apparently nothing's smoking. I don't hear anything, but I have a dummy load plugged in, so I should plug in an antenna and see if I hear anything. Of course, the receiver is not tuned, so now I have to go through the tuning procedure. Let's see if the keyer works. Yep. So I have my KX2 plugged in, and apparently I get a carrier where it's supposed to be. 10.318. Of course, this is in a dummy load. Actually, the frequency might be a little bit high. I might have to check T1. So it's transmitting, it's receiving, everything works. The only problem is that the maximum frequency is 10.311 megahertz, when it should be below 10.15. So I have to contact Rick and ask him how to modify L1, I believe, to lower this frequency. I'm using a piece of scotch tape to attach the batteries to the circuit board. I'm just going to leave them like that. I might, have to change them later, so that's it. And now moving on to soldering the contacts with the minus of the battery pack soldered to the circuit board so that it acts as a shield. And then I'm going to be using leads that are for a LiPo charger. Here I'm just connecting the wires and using heat shrink. Here's the connector for the LiPo charger, and I'm going to heat up the wire and shrink the insulation onto the wires. I'm going to do that for the 3 contacts that it needs, and also put a little piece of heat shrink tubing on the wires. Unfortunately, I forgot to connect the last wire to connect to the plus of the radio, so later I had to cut that one and do it again. But it works. So here I'm using a lighter again to heat up the heat shrink tubing. Works pretty well. Here's the connector. I'm going to show you the LiPo charger that I use. It's a 9 to 16 volt input DC, and of course you can charge up to I think a 4 cell LiPo. Of course I use the 3 cell connector. We see here that the voltage is still 11.6, and you can see a battery 2, battery 3, 3.86. You can see the voltage of each cell, and here I'm recharging those cells with a power supply. C7 is used to lower the frequency, and it goes right here. So I just soldered a 100 picofarad capacitor there. So with 100 picofarads on C7 I get 10.2, which is a little bit lower, so I just have to add some more capacitance. So it took 182 picofarads to get to a maximum of 10.125 megahertz. The minimum, which is great, is on 10.1 megahertz, so I have 25 kilohertz to play with, and that's half the band. Excellent. It's working. So I peaked the transmitter using these two here. I didn't have a watt meter, so I used my KX2. I'll probably redo it once I get a QRP watt meter. And I peaked the receiver using this one here. It's an adjustable inductance. The batteries will come right on top here. They're attached to this circuit board, which will make a nice shield also. They barely fit, but they do. Recharging will be done from the outside with my charger, my LiPo charger. So this will just be tucked in there. And that's it. I'll put the lid on. I won't be attaching the protective bar here tonight probably, because I still have a problem with the button that I have to put here. So I'll do that later, but I can use the radio like it is. And that's about it, guys. I'll close it up and then we'll test it on the air. So this is the kind of weather we usually have in the north of France. Pretty bad. Foggy and rainy and cold. I'm using the Hybrid Micro with the whip, which for 30 meters is going to be very short, but it worked well in the past, so we'll give it a shot. You can see that nifty battery tester here. Full battery. I really like the fact that you don't have any batteries hanging around. The batteries are inside the case, and that's a great feature. I think I'm going to do that more often. I'm going to try to place some calls and see if I get reports on the reverse beacon network. You can see here on the reverse beacon network that I am actually being heard. And notice that I'm on 10.106 megahertz, which is crazy because it is the calling frequency for low power QRP radios. And I had no idea I was on that. It was just totally random. I was just turning the knob and found an empty space and started calling, and it just happens that I was on the QRP calling frequency. But again, it works. I called quite a few times. not a very strong signal, although you can see there OH6BG reported me at 13 decibels over noise, which is pretty good. The other three, 2, 6, and 4 decibels, very weak, but at least I know that people will hear me and would potentially answer me. And that's why now we're going to try to make some real contacts. Yep. Vlad. Oh, it's very fast and fading. Wow, I'm really impressed. I have to say, I'm impressed with this radio. I used to have the 40 meter version when I lived in Florida, but I didn't use it much because at the time I didn't practice straight key. So I didn't have a straight key. Later I had a straight key, but I wasn't quite. I just preferred the keyer, but I was wrong. You don't have to have a keyer to do Morse code and do good Morse code. Although I will say that using an automatic keyer helped me with the timing. So I believe that because I used an automatic keyer at the beginning, I got good timing on my straight key code. It's pretty low power, but again, how much power do you need? I was using a 3.2 meter whip antenna, which is ridiculous because, of course, on 30 meters, the antenna should be 15 meters long, and it's only 3.2. So there wasn't much power coming out of that antenna, I'll tell you. Maybe 2 watts out of the radio, and who knows, probably a few hundred milliwatts coming out of the antenna. So you don't need much power, guys. Power is not a factor in long distance communications, at least when you're using Morse code, CW mode. But for voice you need a little bit more. But when you think that a tiny radio like this can make contacts hundreds, thousands of miles with the power of a flashlight, you have to be absolutely amazed, and I am. And so to conclude, if you want one of those, go to Midway Electronics, get yourself a kit. I think it's like I don't know, I think it's about $65, something like that. Don't quote me on that, ask Greg. Go to the website, and because this is an awesome radio. The receiver is pretty sensitive. It works well. I mean, you can put it in this case here that you can see on part 1. And you end up with a pretty rugged radio that you can use outside. I could use this. I could use it in light rain, not worry too much about it. Something I wouldn't do with my KX2 or some other radios that are more expensive and full of holes to for water to seep in. Great success, and you'll see this radio again, that's for sure, because I'm going to be using it like crazy. Have a good one.